I'm not a dog person. For years, I've said it like a shield. It gave me an excuse to walk past things I didn't want to see, to stay out of trouble. This midday in San Diego, I told myself again. The parking lot was so hot the asphalt shimmered like glass, heat quivering in the air. I slammed the trunk shut, started the engine, and let the AC blast my face. All I had to do was shift into reverse. Another ordinary day, I thought. The rearview mirror didn't let me. Between gleaming cars sat an abandoned shopping cart. Tied to its frame was a Doberman puppy, black and tan, coat ragged like torn cloth, ribs showing through. Both front legs were cinched tight with duct tape. Its chest rose and fell so shallow it looked like a thread about to snap. A scrap of paper swung in the wind, tapping the metal with each gust. Vesper. People walked past. A mom pulling her child. A man in dark glasses. Engines starting, cars rolling out. Nobody stopped. My hand clenched the gear shift. I told myself, not my problem. I'd built an invisible line for years. On the far side lay money, worry, responsibility. I'd learned to stay on this side. Then its eyes found mine. No bark, no howl, just a silent, wet, wide stare asking, why has the whole world left me? My heart beat harder than the engine. Sunlight flashed off the tape like a set of cuffs. I'm not a dog person, suddenly felt like a hollow excuse. I hit the brake. The car lurched, seatbelt locking across my chest. I knew if I drove away, I'd carry those eyes forever. I opened the door and stepped out. Heat hit my face like a wave of fire. I ran to the cart. The puppy shrank back, so small it seemed it could vanish. Its black and tan fur was dry, matted, and patchy with burned skin. "Don't touch it, sir." "Liability," a security guard called out, voice flat as a policy manual. Another man shook his head. "Just a dog. Someone'll deal with it." He walked on. The scrap of paper clicked against the metal again. I knelt. The tape had bruised the tiny ankles purple. I had nothing but a pocket multi-tool for breaking down boxes. My hands shook as I sawed through each nylon strip. The blade was scorching under the sun, but I didn't stop. I'm sorry, little one," I murmured. The first strip snapped free, pulling a tuft of fur with it. It whimpered softly, a sound more like a dry leaf breaking than a cry. I kept going. A little girl tugged at her mother. "Mom, it's thirsty." The woman handed me half a bottle of water. I dripped a few drops onto its lips. The tongue flicked once. In its eyes, a spark flickered, thin as a match in the wind. "What's your name?" I asked, then answered myself. "Vesper." Saying it, I saw its eyelids blink slowly. Just that, but it felt like agreement. I stripped off my shirt and wrapped it around the pup. It weighed almost nothing, frighteningly light. I lifted it and ran back to my car. Cold air blasted from the vents, but sweat slicked my palms. At the first red light, its head sagged into my hand, chest rising so thinly. I swallowed hard and hit the gas when it turned green. Mission Valley blurred behind us. I didn't see the signs, only heard the thin, splintered sound coming from its throat, a fractured breath, a fragile but urgent signal. I'm still here. "I'm not a dog person," I said, my voice shaking. "But don't die in my arms." I shoved open the clinic door. Cold air hit me like another world. The receptionist looked up, clipboard in hand. "Fill this out." Stray protocol. I glanced at Vesper, fur matted, skin gray, eyes closing like a door. My voice came out louder than I meant. "He won't survive 10 more minutes." A vet appeared, scooping him through the swinging door. The weight vanished from my arms, leaving a heavy emptiness in my chest. I signed the financial responsibility box without thinking about the cost. The waiting room became a place without clocks. Beeps from machines, the drip of IV fluid, every sound straining my ears. Then from the back came a thin whimper, like a flare in the dark. The vet emerged, eyes tired but voice steady. Severe dehydration, burned paw pads, blood sugar is dangerously low. He's critical, but he's hanging on. I exhaled, lungs working for the first time again. I clasped my hands and whispered, "Vesper." In that moment, I thought I saw a tiny ear twitch behind the glass. I knew I'd crossed the line, and on the far side of it, a small life was still fighting, waiting for me not to turn away. I sat in the waiting room, my jacket twisted in my hands. Behind the white door came the faint, uneven beeping of machines, like someone knocking on a door that would not open. I had no idea how many breaths Vesper had left. His name was still dangling from that crumpled scrap of paper, a rushed scrawl someone had tied to the cart like a sentence. I thought, if I walk away now, then Vesper will vanish into the list of lives no one remembers. The vet returned, her voice low. "We need more time." She moved as quickly as she'd come, leaving me alone with the silence pressing heavier by the minute. I sat down, pressing my palm against my forehead. For the first time in years, I felt afraid of helplessness. I wasn't used to it. I'd always had options, always had a way out. But now everything rested on the fragile rise and fall of a Doberman pup's chest. Time in that room stretched like an entire lifetime. People kept passing through, healthy dogs wagging tails, cats crying from carriers, children laughing. Only I sat still, anchored to a gray plastic chair. When the door swung open, I shot to my feet by instinct, only to collapse again when it wasn't news meant for me. I didn't leave the clinic that night. Close to midnight, the vet came out, her eyes red with fatigue. "He's still holding on." "But it's fragile," I nodded, not trusting my voice to answer. I went back to my car and sat in the dark with the engine off. San Diego outside still glowed with light, but to me, the world had shrunk to one white room behind glass. At dawn, the door opened again. In the vet's arms was a small bundle of towels. I looked down, tiny eyes half open, weak but still lit. "If you're willing," she said, "we can release him to you as a foster. But he'll need care around the clock," I didn't think. I just nodded. The answer rose faster than reason. I took Vesper back into my arms. His heartbeat pressed against my chest, thin but real. Not heavy, but enough to remind me. I was carrying a line, and one wrong step could drop him. I pulled him closer and swore to myself I wouldn't let him fall again. Driving home, the AC blasted at full power, but I still feared he was cold. I turned the vents away and held him wrapped in the towel. Morning sunlight streamed through the windshield, catching the black and tan patches of his ragged coat. I realized I was whispering, "Hold on, Vesper." "We're not done yet," I'd said and the moment I heard it, I knew there was no longer a separate me or him back at my apartment. Reality hit. I had nothing for a dog. No bowl, no bed, no leash. Just the scraps of a man who had lived alone too long. I laid Vesper on a folded blanket. He curled so small he nearly disappeared in the fabric's folds. I knelt beside him, took the syringe the vet had given me, and pressed water drop by drop into his mouth. Each drop was a battle. Each time he licked faintly, my heart seized and then released. That night, I couldn't bring myself to leave him in the metal crate a neighbor loaned me. When I tried to set him inside, he whimpered, legs twitching like in a nightmare. The sound of bars clanging echoed the shopping cart from yesterday. I couldn't stand it. I pulled a blanket onto the floor and lay beside him. My hand rested near, close enough for him to touch, and, as I'd hoped, he rested his tiny head on it, breathing ragged but steadier. At 3 a.m, I carried him into the bathroom and sat on the cool tile floor. The apartment air was stifling, but the chill of the tile eased him. He stirred, eyes opening a slit, tongue flicking once against the back of my hand. A lick so faint it could have been imagined, but it cut straight through every wall I'd built around myself. For the first time since I carried him out of that parking lot, I felt the barrier inside me crack. No matter how many times I had repeated, "I'm not a dog person," from that moment on, the words had no meaning. I had crossed the line, and on this side of it was a life that needed me, hour by hour, breath by breath. When morning broke, I saw sunlight wash across his face, a glint in his eyes still tired but open wider than before. I knew the first night was behind us, and countless hard hours lay ahead. But I also knew one thing for certain. I hadn't turned away. I walked back into the clinic the next morning, Vesper curled inside a thin towel. I held him against my chest as if loosening my grip would let him dissolve into sunlight. The city's usual noise pressed at my ears. Horns, brakes screeching, metal shutters rolling up. But all of it felt far away. My whole world had shrunk to the breathing of a Doberman pup. Cold air from the AC hit me as I pushed through the glass door. Behind the counter, busy eyes, papers, protocols. I felt like someone who'd stepped into a world that had no space for my urgency. "You need to fill out this form," the receptionist repeated, her tone unchanged from yesterday. "Standard stray protocol." I looked down at Vesper. His eyes half closed, his breathing so thin it barely lifted his ribs. My own voice snapped out, sharp and fast. "If I sit here filling out paperwork, he'll die in my arms." Something in my tone must have made the room pause. A young vet emerged from the back, came straight over and lifted Vesper from me. In that instant, it felt like part of my chest had been taken with him. I staggered, still holding a space heavier than his tiny body. The swing door shut behind them, leaving me alone. I sat, eyes locked on the door, as if staring hard enough could pierce it, see every IV line, every needle. But it was only imagination. All I really had was the faint beep of machines, the soft rattle of wheels rolling down tile, and my own reflection ghosted on the glass. The paperwork still sat there. The financial responsibility box waited for a signature. I picked up the pen. I didn't know the cost. Didn't know how I'd cover it. My hand didn't shake. I signed anyway. In that moment, the only thing I feared wasn't money. It was being too late. Time in the waiting room stopped behaving like time. It stretched, sagged, then suddenly snapped back. A family brought in a cat for vaccines, laughing, and then it was gone. Someone walked a shining dog out, tail wagging, coat gleaming, and I stayed, glued to the chair, fists gripping my jacket like it was the last rope keeping me upright. That second night, I found myself sitting outside again, streetlights pouring pale gold across my windshield. I had never pictured being here, waiting for news about a life I'd known by name less than 24 hours. But each time the clinic door opened, my heart jumped, then dropped when it wasn't for me. I hadn't known waiting could hurt like this. At first light, the vet came out. Her face was lined with exhaustion, but not defeat. "Severe dehydration, burns on her pads, low blood sugar," she recited, then lowered her voice when she saw my eyes. "Critical, but she's holding on." I exhaled, a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for hours. My body felt like a latch had been sprung. I gripped the arm of the chair to keep from folding, and then, from behind the door, a sound. Not a bark. A thin, high cry, like a string snapping on a violin. It froze everything inside me. I looked at the vet. She gave a small nod. "If she can make it through this hour, she'll have a chance." That sentence rang louder than traffic, louder than the hum of the aircon. This hour, everything condensed into a strip of time as fragile as the edge of paper. I clasped my hands, not from habit, but because it was the only thing keeping me from breaking. I whispered her name. "Vesper." Through the glass, I thought I saw an ear twitch. Maybe I imagined it, but I held on to that moment like a drowning man clutching driftwood. That clinic door, the one Vesper had passed through, the one I'd been left behind, became another line in my life. It wasn't about whether I was a dog person. It wasn't about whether I wanted to get involved. It was where the truth touched me. Some lives survive only because one person stops. And this time, I had stopped. My apartment had never been this silent. I closed the door, and in that instant, San Diego's noise disappeared, replaced by the fragile sound of a small breath in my arms. Vesper, a frail black and tan Doberman pup, wrapped in a towel, lighter than the pillow on my bed. I set him down on a folded blanket on the floor. He curled into himself, legs trembling as if even the wooden boards beneath him were too cold, too hard. Beside him sat the small syringe of water and a vial of electrolytes the vet had given me, along with her warning, drop by drop, hour by hour. I crouched down, my hands shaking as I guided the first drop to his lips. His eyes fluttered open, tongue brushing weakly, swallowing as though dragging a boulder. I stayed patient. Drop by drop, until I saw his tiny throat move. I wasn't used to this. I used to laugh when people said they lost sleep over pets, yet here I was, trembling at each drop of water that touched his tongue. I realized I was just as fragile. As night deepened, I tried placing him inside the metal crate my neighbor had loaned me. Vesper whimpered, a sound that sliced straight through my chest. His legs twitched, his eyes wide, as if he were back in that sun-scorched shopping cart. The rattle of metal bars woke old terror. I couldn't bear it. I lifted him out again and laid him back on the blanket. I dragged my pillow onto the floor and lay beside him. I kept my hand close enough that all he had to do was reach. And he did, shifting his tiny muzzle onto my fingers. His breathing was ragged but steadier. I stared into the dim ceiling, holding my hand rigid, afraid that if I pulled away, he would disappear. The night dragged. The clock crept forward, mocking me. At 3 a.m., the air in the room grew stifling. I carried Vesper into the bathroom and sat on the cool tile floor. He shivered once, then softened, the chill seeping into his fevered body. I bent low, whispering, "You're safe now, little one." His eyes cracked open. His tongue slipped out, brushed the back of my hand. A lick so faint I almost thought I imagined it. But it was real, small, trembling, and enough to shatter every wall I'd built around my heart. I let out a broken laugh, tears spilling before I could wipe them away. I thought of the years I'd turned away, scrolling past pictures of abandoned animals, scoffing at stories of vet bills, saying, "I'm not a dog person," as an excuse to walk on by untouched. But now, in a cramped bathroom under a weak yellow light, a Doberman pup licked my hand, and my whole worldview collapsed in a single breath. I didn't sleep that night. Every time my eyes closed, I jolted awake, terrified of missing a breath. I heard every wheeze, every twitch of his legs pulling him back into the parking lot. I reached out, patting lightly, whispering, "You're not there anymore." I'm here now. By dawn, light pushed through the curtains, painting gold across his small body curled in the towel. Vesper opened his eyes, tired but brighter than the night before. I held still, barely breathing. He blinked once, then lowered his head onto my hand again. Not in fear this time, but as a choice. And I understood. The first night was behind us. He was still here. And I, the man who once swore never to get involved, had stepped onto a path with no way back. That morning my apartment felt brighter than usual. Sunlight cut through the curtains, stretching long across the floor. I was still on the blanket, knees stiff from a sleepless night. But I didn't feel tired. I heard it, a faint sound, a whine stretched thin, like someone trying to find their voice again. I opened my eyes. Vesper was trying to stand. His spindly legs trembled, wobbling as if a breeze could topple him. He held himself for only seconds before tilting sideways, muzzle thumping lightly against the blanket. My heart clenched. And then I saw what I never expected. His tiny tail wagged. Once. Weak, but undeniable. I dropped to my knees, vision blurring. Last night I had feared waking beside a cold, lifeless body. Yet this morning he stood and wagged his tail, fragile, fleeting, but a signal. I'm still here. I grabbed the phone and called the clinic. The vet's voice came through, steady but urgent. That's a good sign. But keep up the deworming meds, more electrolytes. Food must be soft, given in tiny spoonfuls, several times a day. I scribbled notes like a student, every instruction suddenly sacred, a small gospel written for the two of us. The rest of the day, I stayed at his side, spoon in hand, offering watered-down porridge. Vesper ate painfully slowly. Each swallow took effort. But every time he lifted his eyes to me, it felt like a question. Am I doing it right? I smiled, nodded gently. Good. Just a little more words. I never imagined myself saying, yet they came as naturally as breathing. By afternoon, sunlight burned across the balcony. I dragged out an old umbrella, carving a patch of shade. I laid Vesper on his towel, his head propped on a thin pillow. His fur was still sparse, skin patchy, but where the light slipped in, I noticed some spots weren't as dry as yesterday. I sat beside him, stroking gently with a soft cloth. Vesper's eyes closed, as if he were savoring something entirely new. Street sounds drifted up. Somewhere below, a shopping cart rattled across pavement. Vesper froze, his whole body stiff, ears pricked, eyes wide. He shrank back, trembling. I placed my hand over him, patting softly. It's all right. You're not there anymore. It took minutes, but finally he pressed his head into my palm. I understood then. The past was still inside him. Some shadows don't leave so quickly. By late afternoon, I carried him out to the narrow alley behind my house. The fence was draped in bougainvillea, bright pink petals falling across the path. I set him down, thinking at least he should feel a world beyond four walls. Vesper moved slowly, each step shaky, but his eyes were alive with curiosity. He sniffed the air, lowered his nose to a fallen petal, and sneezed so hard he toppled onto his back. My chest lurched, then I burst out laughing, loud, for the first time in days. Vesper tilted his head, puzzled, as if to ask, what just happened? Then he tottered forward again, nose pressed to the petals. In that moment, I saw something I hadn't dared hope for. Joy. Not mine. His. A puppy once abandoned, tied under the sun, was now breathing in the scent of flowers. Ordinary, but to me, it was a miracle. That evening, I set down his food bowl. He sniffed, then looked up at me. I coaxed, "Go on, little one." He licked a few bites, not much, then dropped his head in exhaustion. Fear pricked at me, but when I touched his forehead, it was cool. Not fever, just worn out. I stroked his back, letting him rest. Before turning off the light, I saw his tail flick again. Twice this time, weak but steady. I sank down, tears rising fast. I whispered, "All right. I hear you. You haven't given up that night. For the first time since it began, I slept. Not deeply, but enough to dream. And in the dream, Vesper ran. Not stumbling, not bound with tape. He ran circles around me, ears high, tail wagging hard. When I woke, I swore I still heard it. The faint thump of his tail against the towel, thin as a thread of hope, but real. That night, after what had felt like a gentle day, Vesper changed. At first it was just his eyes, dull, unfocused. Then he turned away from his food. I tried the spoon, but he weakly shook his head, muzzle sliding aside. When I laid my hand on his forehead, the heat burned my palm and tightened my chest. My heart hammered. The vet's warning replayed in my mind. Puppies this young can slip fast. Fast. And I was watching it happen. I reached for the syringe, tried to slide water along his lips. This time he wouldn't take it. He turned his face, breathing heavy, eyes half closed as if sinking into some dark place. I whispered his name. Vesper. Hold on, little one. Nothing. I didn't wait. I wrapped him in the towel, lifted him, and ran for the car. Night in San Diego was still hot, neon lights flashing across my windshield as I tore through intersections. Every red light was torture. I tapped my fingers against the wheel, eyes fixed on the speedometer, ear bent toward the fragile breaths in my arms. At the clinic door, I almost shouted as it opened, "He's unresponsive! Please, help him!" A tech rushed forward, scooped Vesper out of my hands, and vanished behind the door. And I stood there again, empty-armed. Only this time, the emptiness was heavier because I knew if he let go, a part of me would collapse with him. I dropped into a chair, fingers interlaced so tight my knuckles blanched. From the back came the doctor's voice. "Temperature's spiking. Sugar's crashing." The words slammed into my skull like hammers. I sat there uselessly, nothing to do but wait. I called my sister. My voice cracked. "He's critical." On the other end, silence held for a beat, then she whispered, "Daniel, you went back for him." "Don't leave now. Stay, just that. Enough to make me sit upright." I couldn't walk away. Not this time. Time warped. An hour passed like a year. The sounds of machines, hurried footsteps, and the smell of antiseptic filled me. I pictured Vesper on a cold steel table, tiny body laced with IV lines, fighting a storm inside him. Another battle, bigger than any he'd faced. Near 3 a.m., the door opened. The vet waved me in. I shot up, heart pounding in my ears. On a thin blanket, Vesper lay trembling, IV taped to his leg. I bent close, whispering, "I'm here. You're not alone." His eyes flickered open, clouded, exhausted, but with a glint still burning. His muzzle nudged my wrist, weak but deliberate. The vet gave a small nod. "He's choosing to live." The words broke me open. Tears rose, spilling onto the ragged fur beneath my palm. I couldn't stop whispering, like a vow. "I'm not leaving again. No matter how many nights like this, I'm here." They handed me a foster-to-adopt form. I stared at the lines. A week ago, I'd have scoffed. Now my hand didn't shake. I signed, not out of obligation, but because in that moment I knew. I was his person. In that white room, under harsh lights casting shadows on the floor, I sat and listened to the slow beep of the heart monitor. Vesper breathed in short, sharp pulls, each breath a blade across my chest. But there were still breaths, still a fight. And this time, it wasn't only him fighting. It was me, too. That morning, San Diego didn't look like itself. The sky was clear, the first light spilling gold across the sidewalks, as if the whole city were whispering, "Today is different." My hands trembled as I looped a small leash around Vesper's neck. He could stand now, stepping slowly but more sure of himself. His black and tan coat still showed patches of loss, but his eyes blazed, eager to drink in the world. In the car, Vesper sat upright in the passenger seat, shivering from time to time. He didn't curl up against the door. He looked at me instead. Just one look, but I could hear it clearly. "You're still here, right?" I nodded, rested my hand on his head. "Yeah, I'm here. We're going together." At the rescue center, the air carried a faint mix of disinfectant and dry kibble. A sign on the wall read, "Belonging Day." I stopped. Belonging. A small ceremony, but to me it felt like a wedding for two beings who had once been strangers, now choosing to be bound. They handed me the final paperwork. I signed, my pen steady. Around Vesper's neck, a staffer fastened a moss-green leather collar, the silver tag engraved, "Vesper, San Diego, home." The soft clink of metal made my eyes blur. A week ago, that sound would have sent him into a panic. Today, he leaned closer to my leg. We stepped outside. From somewhere nearby came the rattle of a shopping cart. Vesper froze. I held my breath, waiting for the old fear to surge. But this time he didn't pull away. He pressed himself against my leg, choosing to lean instead of flee. A small decision. But I knew it was trust. Back at the apartment, I laid a new cushion by my desk. Vesper circled once, then lay down, exhaling as if he had finally found a place that belonged to him. I opened a drawer and took out the crumpled scrap of paper with VESPER scrawled on it. I slid it into the signed file. A cruel fragment of the past, now proof of a beginning. That evening, as I wrote a few lines in my journal, he curled beneath my chair. No words needed. No gestures. Just his steady breathing, his silent presence. Enough to let me know I wasn't alone anymore. I realized then, the bond between a person and an animal doesn't need language. It comes in a look, a breath, the touch of a trembling nose against your hand. I had once told myself I wasn't a dog person. The truth was, I had never given myself the chance to listen to another life beyond my own voice. Vesper taught me that. Compassion doesn't have to be spoken. It can be felt in silence. A tail flicking once, a breath ragged and then strong enough to tear down the wall between two worlds. Now, every time I hear the soft jingle of his silver tag in the apartment, I know we belong to each other. Not in the sense that I saved him, but that we saved each other. He pulled me out of years of quiet retreat. I gave him the chance to live. And maybe that's the real meaning. Compassion doesn't just save one life. It saves your own. Thank you for staying with us until the end of this story. Maybe you felt it too. Sometimes a look, a breath, or the flick of a tail is enough to change a life. Vesper has no words, but he taught me trust, patience, and, most of all, unconditional love. If this story touched you, I hope you'll keep that flame of compassion alive. Out there, countless small lives are waiting for a hand that turns back, a heart willing to open. Share this story so hope can spread. And if you'd like to follow more rescue journeys like this one, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. Every subscription is a bridge that helps more lives be seen, heard, and given a chance. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.